Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fan, hold on to this. The Vikings have a strong candidate for a $21 million edge deal to replace Jonathan Greenard, and in a quick move, they signed a defensive lineman in free agency. Kevin O'Connell has an urgent plan to fill the remaining gaps on offense, with even a familiar name starting to circle back into the conversation. But the biggest moment comes from the absence of a player who left a message hanging in the air, and that one matters more than it sounds. Let's go, because there's good stuff. And some worrying signs coming up. There's movement happening behind the scenes on the defensive side that doesn't grab attention right away. But when you connect the dots, it starts to make a lot of sense, because it's not just about who's on the field right now. It's about who still needs to step into the rotation, and more importantly, who's going to keep the pressure alive when this defensive line starts rotating. Minnesota already has strong names up front. Dallas Turner stepping into a bigger role, Andrew Van Ginkel established. But there's a clear gap, a real hole at that third edge spot. And over the course of a full season, that costs you. That is how defenses wear down in December. Then a name starts to show up that, at first glance, looks like just another option. But it's not that simple. A.J. Epinesa, a guy who spent years in Buffalo, built steady production, showed real ability to pressure the quarterback. He's not a headline grabber, but he's the kind of player who changes a defensive series, flips a third down, impacts tight games. The problem is, there's a detail that slows everything down. He had a deal lined up with the Cleveland Browns. Contract basically done. Just needed to be finalized. Then came the issue. Failed physical. And that changes everything. Because when a team pulls back like that, it's not for no reason. And even without public details, it's known he dealt with a neck issue recently. Still, he played in the playoffs. So this isn't an easy situation to read. Now strictly on the field, Epinesa brings pressure. That's real. But against the run, it gets rough. His numbers there are well below average, so he basically becomes a pass rush specialist, and that brings the real question into this conversation. Is it worth the risk? Because if he's healthy, he fits perfectly into Brian Flores' rotation. Comes in on third down, pressures, helps close out drives, but if he's not fully right, it becomes a problem fast. And there's more. His value could drop because of this, which opens the door for a short, low-cost deal. The kind of move teams make when they want a controlled risk gamble. But then it comes down to philosophy. Do you go with A.J. Epinesa, or do you look at more established names like Jadeveon Clowney or Von Miller, who are still available? This isn't just about talent. It's about betting on something. It's about how much risk Minnesota can live with while still chasing real pressure. And depending on what the team decides here, it gives you a clear signal of how this defense is being built for the season. Now keep that in mind, because what's coming next shifts to the interior line. And that change might tell us even more about the plan. There's movement happening inside the defensive line that, at first glance, might go unnoticed. But this is exactly the kind of adjustment that changes how a defense functions over an entire season. Because it's not just about who makes the tackle, it's about who makes that tackle possible. Minnesota is reshaping the trenches. Veteran out, youth coming in, development bets. And in the middle of all that, a name shows up that most people weren't even tracking. Eric Johnson II. A defensive tackle at 320 pounds. Massive physical presence. He's not the kind of player who fills up the stat sheet. That's not his role. His job is to take up space, absorb blocks, and free the rest of the defense to fly. And in Brian Flores' system, that carries serious weight, because this defense lives off pressure, off blitzing, off confusing reads. And for that to work, the interior has to hold the physical line. If it doesn't, everything collapses. Now let's be clear. Eric Johnson II's career production doesn't jump off the page. Limited numbers, limited highlights, no regular season start so far. So why bring him in? Explosiveness. During the draft process, he posted elite athletic scores, one of the top combinations of speed and power. So the raw potential has always been there. But potential and production are two different things. And that's where this situation gets really interesting. Minnesota is betting on youth along that line. Caleb Banks came in with high expectations, but with a foot injury history. Dominique Orange is part of the mix too. Other young players are competing for snaps. So nothing is guaranteed. Eric Johnson II comes in as a stabilizer type, a strong body, more experienced than most of the group, someone who understands the pro game. But he's not guaranteed anything either. He's going to have to fight. He's going to have to prove he can stay on the field in physical situations. Because if he doesn't, that spot gets taken quickly by someone younger. And this connects directly to a bigger concern. The run defense struggled last season. Too much space given up, too many short yardage failures. And if that doesn't improve, it won't matter how much pressure you generate. the team will still suffer. That is the kind of flaw that shows up late in games. So this move isn't just depth, it's an attempt to fix a structural issue. Now, will this kind of piece actually solve it, or is the team still searching for the right balance inside? Stay with me, because the next topic shifts completely and goes straight to the offense, where the fan base in purple and gold is starting to lose patience for a reason. Now the focus flips completely to the other side of the ball, and this is where things are starting to get uncomfortable. Because this isn't about stars. It's not about the top of the roster. It's about that small detail, the one that, when it's missing, slows the entire offense down. The Vikings lost an important piece from their receiver rotation, and so far, nothing concrete has replaced it. Then a name comes into play that was inside the building, met with the staff, evaluated closely, but left without a deal. Jauan Jennings. And that alone raises a big question. Why? Because when you look at the situation, it makes too much sense. Justin Jefferson is the guy. Jordan Addison is the clear second option. But after that, uncertainty starts. Right now, expectations are leaning on Ty Felton. A young player, limited impact so far, minimal production, still developing, and betting on youth is fine. But when your goal is to get back to the playoffs, relying only on that becomes risky. Jennings, on the other hand, brings the opposite. Experience, consistency, 5 seasons in the league, steady production. He's not a deep threat type, but he's reliable, converts third downs, secures tough catches, gives the quarterback breathing room. And in a structured offense, that matters a lot, especially when every drive in the NFC North feels expensive. What stands out here is the timing. The team had the entire draft to address this position, and didn't. 9 picks. Not one wide receiver selected. After that, they added multiple undrafted names, but that's a different kind of bet. That's volume. That's hoping to find a surprise, and that doesn't solve things right away. Then you bring the guy in for a visit, evaluate, talk, and don't close. That sends a strange message. Either the team isn't convinced, or they're waiting on something bigger. And that's where a lot of people are starting to read between the lines. Minnesota might be holding off on a move, might be waiting for another name, because leaving this gap open doesn't feel like a final decision. And I'll tell you this isn't just a roster detail. It directly impacts how the offense functions. Rotation, rhythm, quarterback confidence, all of it runs through that third receiver spot. So the question is simple, but heavy. Are the Vikings going to fix this now, or enter the season with a question mark on offense? Keep that question close, because the next story involves a name this fan base knows very well, and the debate gets even harder. And now, this is where things reach another level. Because this isn't just about roster adjustments anymore. This is a big name. This is history. This is the kind of situation that splits a fan base in half. Because while the team is still searching for answers at wide receiver, one specific name has started to gain traction behind the scenes. And it's not just any name. Stefon Diggs. Just hearing that brings mixed reactions, right? Some people light up immediately. Others remember everything that happened before. And that's exactly why this story carries weight. Minnesota has cap space. There's a clear need at the position, and Diggs is still producing at a high level. His recent numbers show that. Receptions, yards, impact, he's still a difference maker. But it's not just about production. There's personality, there's history, there's the locker room factor. And that can't be ignored. Analysts around the league have started to connect his name to Minnesota as a real possibility. Some believe a reunion makes sense given the current situation. Others see risk, especially considering his emotional profile. And then there's the detail that changes everything. Off-field situation. Legal matters that still haven't been fully resolved. That alone explains why he's still available at this stage of the offseason. So this isn't a simple decision, because if you look only at the field, it fits. He would elevate the offense immediately. He'd be a strong weapon alongside Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. But when you widen the lens, the conversation becomes much more complicated, and that leads to the question that divides any fan base. Is it worth bringing him back? Is it worth making that kind of move right now? Because this isn't just football. It's team culture. It's locker room chemistry. It's direction of the project. And depending on the answer, the impact could be massive, for better or worse. That's why this one can't be brushed off like another rumor. And this situation can still move fast, because if this name doesn't land, someone else has to fill that role. And that's exactly where the next story comes in. Because it's not about who might arrive. It's about someone who already left and decided to speak openly. Now hold on to this, because this story changes how you look at everything that just happened. The departure of a key defensive piece wasn't just another trade. It wasn't just roster movement. It was a heavy decision. And once you start understanding what happened behind the scenes, it hits differently. because the player didn't want to leave, and that shifts the entire tone. Jonathan Greenard, one of the most impactful pass rushers on the Vikings recently. Solid production, constant presence, respected on the field, and still, he was traded during the draft. And the return? Third-round picks, a move clearly focused on the future. But after that, he spoke out, and he didn't hold back. Greenard made it clear he wanted to understand his market value. He wanted to see how teams viewed his impact. And once that conversation turned into contract numbers, the situation shifted. It wasn't about wanting out, it was business. And that carries weight. Because when a player at that level says he wanted to stay and still gets moved for financial reasons, you start to understand the direction the team is choosing. It's not about now, it's about building. But that comes with consequences, because you're removing a player who consistently created pressure, a guy who, even without huge sack totals, disrupted quarterbacks, forced mistakes, changed offensive rhythm, and replacing that isn't easy. The front office even admitted it. It doesn't make the team better in the short term, but in their view, it was the best move long term. Then you look at the other side, the Eagles stepped in. Howie Roseman saw value, saw a player who's hard to block, a player who could elevate their defensive line even further, and didn't hesitate to pay the price. So while one side is betting on the future, the other is trying to win now. And that always creates comparison, always creates pressure. Because if this move doesn't pay off down the line, people will remember it, and they'll bring it up fast. But if it works, if the young players develop, then everything shifts. Right now, though, what remains is that uneasy feeling that the team let go of something important, betting on something that hasn't happened yet. And that is a tough sell to a fan base that wants to win. When that happens, the fan base feels it, and feels it deeply. And that's what makes this moment for the Vikings so hard to read. At the same time, the team is making moves, adjusting pieces, and trying to build something new. They're also giving up immediate impact, taking risks, and leaving key gaps open. There's reinforcement coming on defense, questions on offense, big names in the mix, and a financial decision that directly affects the identity of the team. This isn't just off-season movement. This is direction. And if everything clicks, we might be watching the start of something really strong. But if these bets don't pay off, the pressure will hit hard and fast. That's the line Minnesota is walking right now. I want to hear from you. Do these moves make sense, or are they taking things too far? Drop your thoughts, because this space belongs to everyone who lives and breathes Vikings football. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go.